So this is one of those massive undertakings that people are really afraid to try and tackle, like ranking the Sternritter. There's like 30 guys, how could I possibly rank all of them? But it's really not even that hard. Like, most of them have decent enough showings that it's pretty easy to put them in order of who would beat who. Especially when I'm going to be doing it in more of a tier list style, so obviously the characters that are within the same tier can fight each other. It is arguable if character A could beat character B, but if you're a tier higher than someone else, you really have no hope of beating them. For the most part, I'm going to be ranking them in terms of their power, right? So it's like, so one character scales to someone who's just blatantly stronger than character B scales to. There's no real reason to be like, well, let's see what their powers have and let's see how their powers interact. It's like, well, if you're just blatantly stronger and faster than another character, there's no real need to get into what your abilities do because you'll probably just one-shot them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But you guys should really know how I do things right about now. Like, I don't really need to explain everything in super intense detail. I'm sure you'll pick it up as we go along. So let's just jump right into this ranking video. So first off, we have the bad tier. This isn't even like mid, high, or anything like that. These characters are just straight up bad. They have like no feats whatsoever. And it consists of the Roar, the Question, and Shaz Domino. Because all three of these characters pretty much just got swatted away before they could actually do really anything to anybody that they fought. The best thing you can give to like the Roar is that, okay, he damaged Kenpachi's eardrums. So perhaps he scales to Kenpachi. If that's what you want to go with, then pop off. But the Question literally didn't have any time to do anything because Kenpachi's eardrums were like all busted because of his fight with the Overroar guy. And honestly, just as a side note, I think that ability was pretty wasted. This could have been a really good opportunity to help us get insight into lesser known characters. Like if he questioned Jushiro on his backstory, we could be like, oh, we could learn about Jushiro and who he is as a person. That's crazy. But no, he got swatted away by Kenpachi, the guy who literally doesn't even have a backstory. So if he's like, who are you as a person? Kenpachi's just like, I don't care, bro. Like, I literally came from nothing. And then Shaz Domino, like, he killed Akon, I guess, but then he got obliterated by Ichigo. And that's really all that he has. So these characters just sit comfortably at the bottom of bad. They're just bad characters. They don't belong on the list anywhere. They're just trash. Put them in whatever order you want. If you think Shaz Domino is just gonna throw knives at these two and kill them, pop off. If you think the Overroar guy is gonna yell and kill everybody, then pop off. They're all bad at the end of the day. So next we have mid-tier, and the idea of mid-tier are Sternritters that fight characters that still like somewhat scaled to the Espada, right? So for instance, we start off with Pepe and Driscoll, because they both scale to Shuhei and Chojuro respectively. Now, the issue with them being anywhere higher is that Chojuro and Shuhei are both these vaguely captain tier characters. Shuhei at least has some potential to be wanked, right? Because Shuhei does end up killing Kaname, and you could argue that Shuhei just caught him off guard and that's why he was able to do that, or you could argue that Shuhei wasn't mentally prepared to kill Kaname when they first started fighting. You know, when Shuhei has Kaname pinned down and then he starts asking him questions about why he betrayed the Soul Society. Emotion plays a very big role in Bleach. So if Shuhei in that moment wasn't actually prepared to kill Kaname and wasn't in the right mindset, it can actually explain why he got swatted away so easily, but then why like 3 chapters later he just comes and stabs Kaname in the head and just kills him. Kaname being someone that was said to have surpassed all of the Espada, this could definitely bump up Pepe's ranking. But if you don't think that he's actually that strong, like you don't believe that Shuhei is like scalable to Kaname in any capacity, then Pepe's just like vaguely captain level. His next best feat is him like taking over Senbo and Sakura for like 2 seconds, which granted that is post Zero Squad training Byakuya, so you could use that, but it doesn't really go anywhere unfortunately. And then it's unfortunately the same thing for Driscoll. He kills Chojuro, who is like has the same meme as Renji and Ikaku, where it's like, well, we could be captains, but we really admire the captain that we serve under, so we're not going to go become captains. And that just means Chojuro's vaguely captain tier. And yeah, his Bankai did scar Yamamoto, but first of all, that's base Yamamoto, who's still really strong, but it's not like Bankai Yama or anything. And 2, Driscoll doesn't have the same power that Chojuro had with his Bankai. It was stated that the Quincy need to train with the Shinigami's Bankai to actually bring out their full ability. And so Driscoll, having just stolen it, obviously did not have its full power, and that's backed up by Yamamoto being like, bro, why is this Bankai so weak? So they both sit at like the bottom of just being vaguely captain tier, but then we get to Kangdu and BG9. So this is pretty easy because Kangdu fights Toshiro, who fought Holybell. So it's like, okay, so he's vaguely stronger than like Espada number 3. Although Toshiro didn't do very well against Holybell, it was a very close fight for him. Whereas BG9 pretty comfortably beats Soifone, who's able to do massive damage to Baragon, someone that's stronger than Holybell. So it's like BG9 fights a stronger Shinigami who fought a stronger Espada and did better against that Espada. So it's pretty obvious to rank them in that way. Following them, we have Nanana, and this is going to seem a little bit odd, right? But Nanana stances up against Rose at the very beginning of the first invasion, and then the next time we see Rose, he's messed up, and the next time we see Nanana, he's rushing Yamamoto. So presumably, Nanana beat up Rose and then went to go try and jump Yamamoto, which is pretty good because Rose was praised by Stark for being strong. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean Rose actually scales to Stark, right? It just means Stark is acknowledging that he's a strong person. But if we give Rose the benefit of the doubt, it kind of makes the scaling a little bit easier, so that's why I'm using that. Because then we can just have Master Masculine follow Nanana, because while Nanana just beat up Rose, Mask pretty much killed Rose and also killed Kensei on top of that, so he just has a better showing against those two. But then this is where things get a little bit complex. I have the Sternritter girls next, but more specifically just Latato, Candace, and Meninas. Now, they could vary greatly. It really depends on how you perceive the entire Sternritter girl like hierarchy. Now, spoiler alert, Bambietta and Giselle are in the next tier because they just have much better showings, but you could honestly argue that all of the Sternritter girls are just more relative, because you have Latato saying that her and Giselle are stronger than Candace and Meninas, yet Meninas is able to sucker punch Latato and draw blood from her. So if you want to argue that they're all relative, then bump the rest of the Sternritter girls up into high tier as well. There's also the fact that Meninas and Candace are able to damage Kenpachi, which again, it really depends on how you look at this, because you could say that yeah, Kenpachi is obviously very weak in that moment. He is not at full power, but then at the same time, it's still Kenpachi, right? Kenpachi's a very big deal. So it really depends on what side of that you sway on. Like, are you swaying on, well, they're beating up a weakened Kenpachi, which is still really strong, but they probably shouldn't be in high tier, because my idea for high tier is people surpassing the Espada. So do you put them up in high tier? Do you like put them with the other Sternritter girls, or do you not see it as very impressive? That I will leave up to you guys to decide. So next we move into high tier, where we have characters scaling to the top tier Espada and beginning to surpass the Espada. Starting off with Robert Akutron, since he was able to finesse Shunsui. Like, let's not forget, the reason Shunsui got the eye patch and is missing an eye in the first place is because of this man, Robert. Now, remember that while someone like Rose got praise from Stark for being kind of strong, and that's why Nanana and Master Masculine are as high as they are, Shunsui actually killed Stark, and then Robert finessed him. So his feat is a bit better than theirs. Following him, we have Asnod and the other Yourself. Now, Asnod is up here obviously because he beat Byakuya. Byakuya alongside Kenpachi beat Yami, who is the strongest Espada. Now, the other Yourself is kind of up here for some finessery reasons, but if I'm using their best form, technically his best form is when he turned into Kenpachi, who has the same feat as Byakuya, and during the time skip beat Sion Grant, who is as strong as Full Hollow Ichigo. So he's either right next to Asnod because he has basically the same feat since he turned into Kenpachi, or higher if you want to meme with Full Hollow Ichigo scaling. But above them, we start to get characters that are starting to begin to surpass the Espada with Kirhei. Kirhei fights Fullbring, Shinigami Ichigo, and while he gets finessed by Fullbring Bankai, let's not forget that Fullbring Shikai Ichigo cannot cut Kirhei. And remember that Fullbring Shikai Ichigo is still ridiculously powerful. It is the combination of his completed Fullbring and his Shinigami powers. His completed Fullbring was enough to overwhelm Tsukishima, who scales to Byakuya, the post-time skip Byakuya, that Asnod is scaling to, and that is just one half of his abilities. Then you combine his Shinigami powers with that, and some of the meme scaling you can do with his Fullbring, where like his Fullbring is now the completion of his powers, or he's returned stronger than he's ever been. Not only is Kirhei higher than these two, but he could be much, much higher if you want to say that Fullbring Ichigo is stronger than Dangai Ichigo, and then now he stacks his Shinigami powers back on top of that, and then he still can't cut Kirhei. I'm not saying it's true, right? I'm not agreeing with it, but I am saying that Kirhei is this high already, and he could be much higher. But above Kirhei is Bambietta and Giselle, Now, Giselle is obviously above Bambietta because she takes over Bambietta, right? Like, pretty straightforward. But Bambietta is up this high because she's still able to fight and damage Sajin even once he gets his human body. Like, she's still able to do damage to him. And Sajin fights Kaname. He's relative to Hollow Kaname, who stated that he surpassed all of the Espada. So this is when we start to get to characters surpassing the Espada entirely. And that starts with Bambietta being able to fight Sajin. And obviously, again, Giselle is above Bambietta because she takes over Bambietta, so it would be like Giselle plus Bambietta versus Bambietta in this tier list. Then we have Nyanzel, because Nyanzel is able to weave attacks from Karinji being allegedly able to like one-shot Ichigo and Renji when they were in the bath. Karinji's also allegedly the second strongest member of the Zero Squad, like right behind Ichibei. The Zero Squad scaling is very wonky when you get into it, but if you're going to argue it that way, it makes Nyanzel look a bit better. And then Bazby sits at the top of high tier because he's able to fight Renji. Renji, the guy that one-shot Maste Masculine, he bullied Base Gerard, he tanked a punch from Karinji, so it's just pretty like obvious to put Bazby at the top of this tier, above Nyanzel. Now, before we get into the God tier, we have the Schutzstaffel tier, because these characters are definitely stronger than the normal Sternritter, but not quite good enough to be considered God tier. Now, at the bottom of the Schutzstaffel tier, we have the fake Yuha. Now, the reason he's at the bottom is because he's really being carried by him just being a fake Yuha, but the problem is that we still have statements for, like, say, Gremmy, or Gremmy is stated to be the strongest Sternritter. So, while this guy might be stronger than all the other Sternritter below him, just being like Chad Yuha, like by himself, and being able to fight Yamamoto a little bit, he's still not considered to be stronger than Gremmy, who's right above him. Gremmy obviously is being carried by his title as the strongest Sternritter. It's actually confirmed that he is the strongest, and if he starts to bull out, Yuha has to stop him. Now, despite the fact that the Yourself can turn into Yuha, we don't know what Yuha actually has to do to stop Gremmy. So say Yuha actually has to bust out the Almighty to like bring Gremmy's imagination powers down, then perhaps the Yourself actually can't bring Gremmy down. And again, he's still stated to be the strongest despite the fact that the Yourself can turn into Yuha. But then we have the 4 members of the Schutzstaffel, and starting off with Lille being the weakest, it's baffling how Lille can actually be kicked out of the Schutzstaffel tier, because if you think about it, Lille's best feat, or like his main fight, is him fighting Shunsui. And I don't know if you remember, but fighting Shunsui is like bottom of high tier, because while Shunsui is pretty strong, I like Shunsui, his only real other showing is killing Stark, and we have characters fighting people that have surpassed the Espada entirely. So really, Lille is being carried off the merit that he was able to pretty much by himself solo the Zero Division. You know, the Zero Division being strong enough to solo the Gote 13 with 5 members, and he took out 4 of those 5 members. That's really what's carrying Lille into the Schutzstaffel tier. There's also the fact that when we get all these statements for, like, say, Gremmy being the strongest Sternritter, we don't know if that includes the Schutzstaffel post Ash Wallen. Because the Ash Wallen's less of a power-up, but more like unlocking the powers the Schutzstaffel already had available to them. It's kind of like letting them go full power. So was that taken into consideration when Gremmy states that he is the strongest Sternritter? Does he not care about that? Is he knowledgeable of that? Who knows, right? We don't really have an answer to that. So really, in theory, Gremmy could be up in God tier with the rest of like the high tier guys if he's stronger than all of the Sternritter, right? Because that would include people like Uryu and Hashwald as well. But Lille sits at the bottom just because he has the worst showings of the 4, and his powers are kind of the worst of the 4 as well, because he needs to be hit 3 times to go into his intangible form, and Askin and Pernida, if they get 1 hit on him, he's dead. And even if he starts off being intangible, he actually still is tangible, quote unquote. He gets beaten by light, which like does have mass and everything. But even outside of that, Pernida and Askin affect spiritual pressure, right? Like that's how their abilities work. So it's like, they're like, great, you're intangible, but I'm still going to affect your spiritual pressure, like, and that's what's going to get you killed. So that's why he's at the bottom. He has like the worst showings, and his abilities of the 4, he just does not match up well against the other Sternritter. Next is Pernida, and Pernida just adapts to Kenpachi blatantly, a post Unohana training Kenpachi, who is nuts. He beat Gremmy, and then Pernida damn near takes out Nemu and Mayuri at the same time. Mayuri has to basically sacrifice Nemu to actually get the dub. The only thing really holding him back is that he just doesn't have the same level of feats as the other 2. Askin drops true Shikai Ichigo. He beats up like Yoruichi, he scraps with Bankai Kisuke, and even forces Bankai Kisuke to bring in Resurrected Grimmjow to finish the job. Mind you that like base Grimmjow is relative to true Shikai Ichigo, so Resurrected Grimmjow is like more relative to like Bankai Ichigo. So the amount of effort that they had to go through to bring down Askin is absolutely insane. And the only reason Gerard sits at the top of the Schutzstaffel tier is because the dude literally cannot die. And he also tangoed with like Bankai Kenpachi, adapted to that. Toshiro, who has the ability to shut down powers, could not shut down the miracle. You know, he's fighting post Zero Squad training Bianca and he is shrugging all of them off. So it's like not only does Gerard have a very good like just list of showings, but his ability is just insane. The best that I think Askin could do is you'd have to like argue that he poisons Gerard to a point where he can't come back from it. But that's kind of the whole point of the miracle. The miracle is literally just BS the ability. It's like, well, you kill me with whatever mean, I just come back stronger. So you can kind of argue, you can finagle and be like, well, I think Askin should be the top of Schutzstaffel. Go ahead, but it's just, in my eyes, it just Gerard looks so much better. But again, feel free to argue the Schutzstaffel tier as you guys please. Because again, like I did say, if you take Gremmy's statement of being the strongest Sternritter, you could bump that dude up in the God tier. So by all means, go ahead and argue in the comments. Now finally we have God tier, which is occupied by 3 people. The first 2 are Uryu and Hashfald. Now Uryu is pretty much carried up here by fighting Hashfald, and Hashfald is carried up here by being a baby Yuha. He has the Almighty for half the time, so obviously if we're using him in his best form, it would be during nighttime when he actually has the Almighty, which again just turns him into a mini Yuha. He's basically like, I have the Almighty and the balance, just not all the other ridiculous things Yuha can do. He's also, like, as an interesting note, called the Grand Master of the Quincy's, so it doesn't really seem like he's classified as a Sternritter, although he's technically a Sternritter. So that's why I tend to give Jugram a little bit more lenience when it comes to like the Gremmy statement about him being the strongest Sternritter. It's like, well, Hashfald seems to be on a higher plane. Like, he's not just called the Grand Sternritter or something, he's called the Grand Master of the Quincy. So he just seems to be in a higher tier in like the hierarchy, or he's not even considered to be one of the Sternritter. But that's just kind of like my own little game theory thing. Don't take that like too seriously, right? But if you really don't value anything with like, oh, him being like a mini Yuhan, having this multiversal almighty power, like if you don't think that's good enough for him to be up here, then he probably would just get bumped down to like mid Schutzstaffel tier because he scales to Uryu, who scales somewhat to like true Shikai Ichigo. But then at the same time, Jugram is helped out by him fighting Uryu because Uryu's power subverts the Almighty. So it's kind of like they both have a circle jerk that kind of lets them both be in God tier, because it's like, well, I have the Almighty and I have a power that's strong enough to subvert the Almighty, but they can both fight each other. So it's like, they probably should be up here in God tier. It really is their abilities helping them out, but thankfully the Almighty is a multiversal power. So yeah, it is excusable for them to be this high. But if you were just like, nope, I don't like powers, I just want Unga Bunga ape feats, like I don't care about powers and it being multiversal, then yeah, they probably would just be like mid Schutzstaffel tier. But then obviously there's Yuha, like he's the top of God tier, the strongest Sternritter. Like, is there anything else I need to really say about Yuha? Do I need to prove that Yuha is the strongest Sternritter and how he could literally just take any of their abilities away and just become them but better and stronger? You know, not only did he kill Yamamoto, like the strongest Shinigami, but then he killed Ichibei, like the strongest Zero Division member. He killed God. Like, nobody really has those good level of feats, right? It's pretty much just Yuha with these God tier feats. But if you want to come to me and argue that, like, actually, buddy, I think Uryu could box up Yuha real easy, I think he could take him on, then be my guest. You're just going to look a little stupid, but be my guest. I'm not going to stop you. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and just flash the final like tier list for those of you that got like lost during the video. Here's what it looks like in the end. If you disagree at all, or you maybe just want to discuss some things because maybe you were a little confused, because I didn't make this a 40-minute long video. I kind of tried to condense it a little bit because we all got stuff to do, right? You don't got time to be watching me talk about the Sternritter for like 2 hours, all right? If you want more information or you want to debate on the tier list, maybe you just disagree with the tiering of certain Sternritters, my Discord is linked in the description down below. It's also down there if you just want to chill and hang out. If you become a member by clicking that join button, you get access to a special role that gives you access to like a special chat, which I highly advise you, if you're paying for like to be a member and you're getting that role, take advantage of having that special chat. It's literally just me and the YouTube members, and I think some of the mods as well. So if you have questions or things, be sure to use that. Like, that's a very good resource for you to have, and make sure you actually use it. It's like being in class, but you have the teacher's phone number and you never text them on things. Like, make sure you do actually use that and take that to your best advantage. If you join, you also gain access to past live streams, you get access to debates that I upload, all that sort of kind of fun stuff that you guys might be interested in. I'd also encourage you to like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed this type of content. It lets me know that this is what you guys want to see. You want to see more of stuff like this, more Bleach content, more ranking videos, stuff along those lines. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace late, guys.